Good day everybody. In the final installment of the series, we'll be going a bit more in depth into the upcoming changes to Dragoons in the new expansion, Stormblood. The Lancers of Ishgard have received significant adjustments to their combat rotation, as well as the addition of a new resource that further expands on their Blood of the Dragon mechanic. So without further delay, let's get started. With the arrival of Stormblood, Dragoons have also gained their own UI element in the form of the Dragon Gauge, not only responsible for keeping track of Blood of the Dragon, but also the new resource, Dragon Eyes. Let's go over it step by step to better understand how this mechanic works. Firstly, upon the execution of the abilities Jump or Spine Shatter Dive, you will gain a new effect by the name of Dive Ready. The status Dive Ready is necessary to execute the first new ability, Mirage Dive, which is responsible for adding Dragon Eyes to the gauge. Upon the accumulation of 4 Dragon Eyes, represented by the fully opened eye in the Dragon Gauge, it becomes possible to enter the new status, Life of the Dragon, by executing the new, penalty-free Gerskogel. At this point, the duration of Blood of the Dragon is carried over to the new Life of the Dragon, which cannot be increased while active, and will revert back to Blood of the Dragon once its duration expires. In addition, upon entering Life of the Dragon, Gerskogel is replaced with Nastrand, the signature action of level 70 Dragoons. Nastrand functions as a highly empowered version of Gerskogel, but it can only be executed during Life of the Dragon. And while that covers everything you need to know about the new Dragon Gauge, that's not all there is to the new Dragoon. The combo finishers Full Thrust and Chaos Thrust will now always grant Sharper Fang and Claw and Enhanced Wheeling Thrust, respectively, eliminating the previous RNG component of granting either one or the other. In addition, the new trait Lance Mastery obtained at level 64 allows the execution of Wheeling Thrust after Fang and Claw, or Fang and Claw after Wheeling Thrust, further smoothing out the new combat rotation. To compensate for the removal of the old Ring of Thorns, rest in peace, a new area of effect weapon skill is introduced in the form of Sonic Thrust, which can be executed as a combo action following Doom Spike. And the last new ability of Dragoons comes in the form of Dragon Sight, which tethers you to a party member and increases damage dealt by both players, as long as you remain within close proximity of each other. Of course, as part of the combat system overhaul, not all of the Dragoons' previous abilities survived the journey into Stormblood. Many of them were repurposed, merged, or outright removed in favor of a more streamlined combat rotation, an exchange most Dragoons would be pleased with. Among them, Leg Sweep receives an honorable mention, now having become the standardized stunning ability for melee jobs. And Invigorate, which is no longer considered a baseline Lancer ability and has also joined the list of role actions for both melee and ranged classes. So, how hyped are you for the new Dragoon? The more streamlined combat rotation makes maintaining Blood of the Dragon much more consistent, and the new Dragon Gauge brings a much needed twist to help keep things fresh and interesting. That being said, I hope you enjoyed going over all the Stormblood class changes with me. While this may be the end of the series, I've heard they're adding 2 new jobs this expansion, so it looks like there's still work to be done. But in the meantime, let me know how you feel about the new Dragoon. Will you stick him with the pointy end in Stormblood? Let me know in the comments, and I hope to see you next time.